What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here, coming to you to play a little Monday morning quarterback live after the Eagles lost to the Commanders on the road. Crazy game, one of the weirdest games I've ever experienced. Was live there for the game, so in person, really crazy. Let's get into it all. What did we learn from that game about the Eagles, about the Commanders, who could be a potential playoff opponent, and we could do round 3 of this thing here in a few weeks? So what did we learn? Let's get into it all. It felt like that first quarter alone took decades. There was so much that happened within a quarter, and I think we could probably start there. The Eagles lose Jalen Hurts early, and what do we learn from this? The value of Jalen Hurts on the field, because I thought Kenny Pickett played very well for somebody who was put into his position to come in cold on the road as the backup and kind of get thrust into that role without that week of preparation. And I think all things considered, he played really well, but you can see the differences in what causes the strengths of the Eagles and the variety of ways in which they can beat you. So the differences that I saw, really, well, one, they couldn't do the tush push. That's fine. But beyond that, I don't think that they did a very good job of, there was less threat of being able to run the football, both with the quarterback and with the running back as well. So this was from Shane Half, which we saw, and I wanted to point this out. We'll fix the mic here in a second after I read from Shane Half. But the Eagles were at 32% success rate rushing the football today. It's their lowest mark of the season. 6 of 7 runs were successful before Hurts left the game. 5 of 27 runs were successful after Hurts left the game. Now, one of those obviously was the touchdown from Saquon Barkley. But you could just tell, and you could especially tell live, they were just loading up the box and just threatening the Eagles to be able to beat you with Kenny Pickett throwing the ball. And he almost did, because I want to give him credit there, and I don't want to put this as, oh, it's a Kenny Pickett blame game. It was not. But you could just tell they were loading the box or trying to overwhelm the offensive line, which is really the only way to beat them is in strength of numbers. When you get one-on-ones with that offensive line, it's very hard to win. They're so flawless in their blocking execution. But if you can overwhelm them with numbers, then you still have a chance. And that's what the Commanders were successfully able to do. They were able to get behind the line of scrimmage on a lot of those Saquon runs in the second half. And I think then when you put him behind the line of scrimmage, you're in obvious passing downs with a backup quarterback. So if Saquon gets tackled on first down and it's 2nd and 12, you're basically having Kenny Pickett throw it out of 2nd and 3rd and long situations, which is exactly what the Commanders want. So that's the big difference there, is losing that threat of the run, both with the quarterback and with your running back when the backup quarterback comes in. And you could tell, especially the biggest difference there, and it honestly affected the Eagles as well. You look at it on the other side, it's the variety of ways in which you can beat a team. We've talked about this on shows multiple times over the past few weeks with the A.J. Brown drama, but the offense really flows through him, not through Saquon, because if you have that threat that A.J. Brown is going to catch it, break a tackle, and take it 15 yards every single play, it makes it really, really hard to constantly have your eyes in the backfield and constantly be looking for Saquon Barkley. And you cannot stack the box. You cannot load the box. If you have that threat that A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith are going to get over top of you, then all of a sudden you really can't, be focused, keyed in on Saquon Barkley. Today, with the backup quarterback in, it became easier for the Commanders to key in on Saquon Barkley. And like I said, they wanted Kenny Pickett to beat them. He almost did, and he should have. We'll get into that in a second. But that was the clear game plan. They wanted to establish the run on early downs, and they could not. And I thought that was the key difference between, putting some field goals on the board versus having successful touchdown drives. Really, they didn't score a touchdown beyond the Saquon 60-yard run in the first quarter. They moved the ball pretty well, but I think that there was points left on the board because of that situation and kind of being able to stop the run and putting Kenny Pickett in difficult situations. And also, talking about variety of ways to win, the threat being there from the quarterback being able to run, Saquon being able to run, AJ and Devontae being able to beat you no matter when they have a one-on-one. You saw that on the other side with the Commanders. With them, on the key play of the game wasn't the touchdown at the end. They were down 27-14. They go for it on 4th and 11. They were kind of in no man's land. It was too far for the field goal in the cold and the wind. It was a weird place to punt the ball from. They go for it on 4th and 11. He steps up in the pocket, scrambles all the way down to the 10-yard line, sets up a touchdown to make it 27-21. I thought that was the key to the game. They don't get that right there. They're down 2 possessions in the second half. The Eagles, even though they weren't successful running the ball, they're about to run the ball. So I definitely think that was like a key, is like the variety of ways that the other team could beat you because they still had their mobile quarterback in there. So that was the biggest takeaway for me was, you don't have your quarterback. It eliminates some of the ways in which you can win. Now, I will say this. The Eagles are 2 drops away, gut punching, heart skipping drops away from being 14-1 and being the 1 seed in the conference. The Saquon drop in the Monday Night Football game against the Falcons in week 2 was brutal. And I think the Devontae Smith one was even worse because this was a walk-in touchdown that did not happen because he had the drop. He makes some tough contested catches for his size, but man, was that a brutal drop. And it really is just tough on Kenny Pickett because, like I said, I thought he made some big throws. He found A.J. Brown on a 4th down to set up the field goal for them to retake the lead 30-28. He stayed in the pocket. He took some hits. I think they got to the quarterback a few times, but he found his guys. He did exactly what he should do as the backup and find A.J. Brown. But that drop is key to me because I think to myself, man, you catch that, you win the game, you win the division. It's over. It's a wrap. Same with the Saquon one. It's like you catch that, you win the game, you're 2-0. So those two, like you eliminate those drops and you're sitting at 14-1. So it's just really hard to suffer through. And if something goes down the line where you're like in Ford Field and you get a delay of game because the crowd noise is too loud, you're going to be thinking back to those moments and be like, we could have avoided this situation. So I think back to those drops and say to myself, man, that's the difference between an NFC championship at the Link and an NFC championship potentially at Ford Field, where you're covering your ears trying to get the play in your headset and you can't hear it because you're on the road now. It's those 2 plays. And one more thing on Kenny Pickett. There were some things he did I wish that Jalen Hurts would do. I think he took the easy layup catches. I think they were trying to integrate him into the offense, so they had to get him like quick, easy throws, which I would love to see them try with Jalen Hurts. It's just, take the easy ones. Quick slants to A.J. Brown were huge. He found some curl routes to Devontae Smith as well, it looked like. So, finding those easy ones, finding the layups, getting the ball out of his hands quickly. All things I think we should be utilizing with Jalen Hurts that Kenny Pickett did well. Kenny Pickett acted like a guy who was at a party and didn't know anybody except for one person, so he clinged to that person. That's exactly what he should have done. He was the guy who didn't know anybody at the party except for A.J. Brown, so he clung to A.J. Brown. And it worked. It led to their first touchdown. They were 3 for 3. His first 3 targets of the game, all to A.J. Brown, led to a touchdown, some deep shots. Even though it wasn't completed, you got the pass interference. You got the rare 3 flaggers where they threw it to him multiple times, and all 3 refs threw their flag on the pass interference. You had 3 of them deep shots that were called pass interference. Another deep shot you connected on. Take that chance. Your best statistical probability, just getting the ball up and over to your best receiving threat, which Kenny Pickett did. And I think that there are some things that you could take from his performance that you could utilize in Jalen Hurts' performances as well. So again, Kenny Pickett, I thought played well enough to win. They did not, and a lot of it is because of the other things. Here are some other things that we learned that I am a little bit more concerned with. The special teams. It was bad. Like, the kickoff situation is kind of going underlooked because the chaos of that game, 5 turnovers, ejections, infighting, quarterback leaves early, injuries, all kind of chaos going on in the stadium. It felt like every moment, it was the longest game of the 1:00 slate because so much happened. So you kind of miss those in-between details like the kickoffs. They didn't have a single touchback. And I thought, oh, maybe it's because of the wind. But the Commanders were touching back. So were they purposely putting the ball in play? And if so, why? Because the Commanders were getting great field position out of that. Their average starting field position was the 39. So they're plus 10 on what a touchback would be. It felt like they were that's great that was the average because it did feel like they were starting at the 40 every single time. And they did so on the drive where they scored the game-winning touchdown. They had to go the length of the field with 1 timeout, and they did, much in large part because they only had to go 60 yards. That every yard makes a difference in those situations, and they got that multiple times. We had multiple penalties on kickoffs, so not only are you giving up chunk yards on kickoff returns instead of going for touchbacks, but then you're adding on yards on top of that with silly infractions on kickoffs. I thought that was the strangest part of the game. And when you think about it, working in between the margins, you need to be really, really good in playoff situations against good teams, where when you play bad teams, you can kind of overcome the little small details if you mess up, like the difference of 10 yards between starting at the 30 and starting at the 40. But when you play good teams, the difference between starting at the 30 and starting at the 40, when there's a minute 52 left and 1 timeout, is huge because then there's 10 seconds left and they're snapping it from the 6 instead of the 16. It's a huge difference and allowed them the chance to win the game. And that's what happens when you play against good teams. So I don't understand what was going on with the special teams. And Jake Elliott was good from 57 in warmups, came up short during the game. I don't really fault him too much. But again, that's 3 points that were left on the board. At the end of the half, they utilized that situation so well, decided to go for it on 4th down. It set it up so there was only 1 play left in the half. They call the timeout after converting, a quick out to Devontae Smith, and kick the field goal, and he just misses it. So special teams, I'd say yesterday, like, gets an F. They did not do their job well enough. And Jake Elliott was really solid. The 50-yard field goal to clutch to take the lead back was huge. He had a few big kicks yesterday, so he was good. But overall, like, kickoffs, I thought the punt situation, like, Braden Mann just did not have a good day, and the kickoff unit in general did not have a good day. That's something to monitor going forward, and why we're not creating touchbacks and creating kickoff return opportunities, which are giving teams good field position and putting our defense in a bind to start. The biggest thing, another thing, what we learned is just health. Like, this team is really, really good. I don't feel any different about this team than I did yesterday. Maybe you could say, like Ray Didinger said, that if they ran into a mobile quarterback, he could give them issues. But I think mobile quarterbacks give every team issues because they're creating an opportunity at another threat. We saw that, the difference between having Hurts and Kenny Pickett. But to me, it's health, because when I think they're at full strength, they can beat anybody. They were really cruising in this game. We brought up the rushing stats and how well they were able to run when Jalen Hurts was the quarterback versus Kenny Pickett. But also on the defensive side of the ball, like, maybe it was just because I was live at the game, but it felt like with the injuries going out, they felt a little discombobulated on subs, who was in, who was out, who should be in. And like, if you have a full unit and you're in sync, those things don't happen. I go back to the play. So CJ Gardner-Johnson gets ejected, and we'll talk about the officials. I know it was crazy. They did not have control. So I go back to CJ Gardner-Johnson getting ejected. 2 personal foul penalties. On the long touchdown in the second half, not the Terry McLaurin one, they did a sub between Tristan McCollum and they brought in Kelee Ringo. Kelee Ringo was playing safety. He's usually a corner. They bring him in for McCollum. They didn't know what to do on the subs. They get a 12-man penalty. It doesn't matter because they score anyway. It's a blown coverage. Things like that won't happen if you have your normal 11. Like, if you have your normal 11 guys, there's usually a sub between, like, slot corner, or do you want to go with an extra nickel instead of having a linebacker? There's times where they utilize a 5-man defensive front, so sometimes they do that. So those are, like, minor substitute changes. In this situation, you're trying to figure it out on the fly, and the Commanders took advantage of that multiple times. On the game-winning touchdown, the safeties in the back end, again, CJ Gardner-Johnson's out of the game, and nobody really knows how to pick up Jamison Crowder, who came across the formation. He started on his left. He gets to the back of the end zone on the right side and kind of follows in no-man land between 2 safeties that probably have not played a lot together, and Tristan McCollum and Reed Blankenship. So it's health. Having all of your guys at full strength is the key. Because when they're there, I'll take our chances against anybody. When you have Jalen Hurts in there, I'll take my chances. When you have both safeties in there, I'll take my chances. When you have Josh Sweat able to rush the passer, I'll take my chances. When you have Jordan Davis, stopping in the gaps up front in the interior, I'll take my chances. But all those guys miss time in one form or another. And because of the constant substitutions due to injuries and ejections, they were just discombobulated on defense a lot of those times. And yes, they did have 5 turnovers, and they did a great job of being ball hawks, which I was really, really proud of them. But aside from that, like, I feel like they just felt discombobulated and unorganized at times, which is to be expected when you could see the injury situation unfolding. They had a game plan, and it got thrown off. So it's just important. Beat Dallas on Sunday, win a division. You're probably going to be the 2 seed, and make sure everybody's healthy and ready to go. And like I said, I'll take my chances against anybody. But the lack of organization due to injuries and due to the ejection was pretty evident on both sides of the football. The officials, I get it. It was bad. They did not have control. I don't know how much they showed on TV. Like I said, I was at the game, and it felt like after every turnover, after every dead ball stop, there was a scrum. There were guys fighting with each other. The receivers in the secondary, the Commanders receivers and the Eagles secondary went at it every single dead ball. Every time there was a TV timeout, those guys were in each other's grills. And I'm not talking from one side of the huddle to the other. They were in each other's faces. They were shoving. It was nonstop. For them to only throw out CJ Gardner-Johnson instead of just laying down the law and throwing a penalty on both sides and being like, this guy, we're done. We gave you guys a fair warning. Anything else goes beyond this, we're done. But it kind of just skewed against the Eagles, so they lost their safety. And on the other one, they get a turnover, and then they have to go 15 yards back. So they would have had possession on the plus side of the 50. They call an unsportsmanlike penalty on the Eagles only. It moves them back on the negative side of the 50. And they end up getting no points from that drive. I thought that was crucial. So you lost your safety and you lost your good field position. And why? You're telling me that Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was alone in causing a fight and causing taunting? You have to have control in those situations when it gets chippy like that. It was really, really chippy. The guys on both sides were shoving, helmets flying off in each other's faces. Get control of those situations instead of skewing it one way. There was no shot that CJ Gardner-Johnson was the only one not in control of his emotions, saying taunts, being unsportsmanlike. It was both ways. Do it both ways, and you'll be fine. Have control of that situation. Also, speaking of control, this is a weird thing that I don't know if they showed on TV. Jalen Hurts, when he was checked for the concussion, went into the blue tent, came out of the blue tent. They gave him his helmet and then took his helmet back. I'm very confused as to how that process works, but it feels like something we need to look at, that you're like, yeah, you can have your helmet. Wait, no, never mind. Take it back. So I just generally thought that was a weird situation to be in. And again, control. We want to be under control on defense, so we know where we need to be. So we're not having receivers behind us. We want our officials to be in control, so we know this is where we're drawing the line on people fighting each other during the game. We want to be in control of our offensive process, being able to establish the run early on first downs so that we can set up the pass to A.J. Brown. And then we have lanes to fill for Saquon Barkley to follow his tight ends and follow his blockers to allow those big chunk plays, those big home runs. Control is the name of the game. That's what we learned this week. I'm not too fretful of the loss from the Eagles. It does cost them the 1 seed, which is brutal, and it happened in a brutal way. But I'll tell you what, I do think this is still a phenomenal football team. When all 53 guys, all 22 starters are there, I will just take my chances against everybody. In reality, my biggest disappointment is being there at the game and not being able to celebrate with all the Eagles fans that made it to FedEx Field. There were so many. Half the lower bowl was all Eagles fans. We just wanted to hit our Cooper DeJean Selly all together in the parking lot. We got robbed of that moment, winning the division on the road against the rival. That's my biggest takeaway in that stuff. But hey, let's do it this week. They've got the Cowboys at home. Lock up the division, secure the 2 seed. Have some rest in week 18. We know what we need to do. We know what we need to get back to. We know what we've learned from this game that we can take forward no matter who the starting quarterback was. And who knows with the concussion protocol, it may be Kenny Pickett again this week against the Cowboys. So let's take care of business at home and all will be well. Crazy game. Appreciate everybody who's followed along on TikTok, on YouTube. Thank you so much. We'll be back with another episode this week. Merry Christmas to everybody. And let's talk some birds versus boys. That's the name of the show, right? And we've got it this week. Cowboys playing well again. Crazy. We'll talk to you all soon.